Okay, due to the elevator not working at Town Hall, the meeting format has been changed to hybrid. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the North Andover Planning Board will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, in-person attendance of members of the public and board members will be permitted. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting live may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to be ensured that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we aren't able to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceeding as soon as possible. If a member of the public would like to participate in the public hearings, you can do so by coming to the meeting. If you would like to do so but not attend the meeting, please email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to Jean Enright at jenright@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be read during the proceeding and responded to accordingly. In addition, we have posted signs on the elevator that the elevator is not working, as well as at the on the entryways. They give my phone number, so if someone comes to Town Hall and is not able to come upstairs to the meeting due to accessibility reasons, they can text me and we'll find another way for them to be able to participate in the meeting contemporaneously. Seems unlikely, but we have made that contingency. All right, Jean, how about I'll just do roll since you're not there. Kay Kelly.
Here.
Sean.
Here.
John.
Here.
Peter.
Aye.
Chris.
Here.
And I'm also here. And Jean, you are participating remotely, correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Why don't we start? So we're doing new public hearings. We're going to hereby open the annual town meeting zoning bylaw amendment articles. Start with accessory dwelling unit. Can I what? It is muted. My laptop's muted. Do you want me to mute? I can mute the Google Meets as well. Okay.
Yep, that's better.
Okay.
Okay, so for the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, in your packet are the final regulations as well as red line regulations as of January 27th. And once those red line regulations came out, I updated the clean January 21st meeting bylaw draft, which was the last draft that you reviewed. So I incorporated what I thought was appropriate red line edits given the final draft red line bylaw regulations that were posted on MassGov. Primarily, those red line edits are to definitions. So they strengthen definitions, they modified definitions. I will say bus station, we had discussed that we are a flag route bus service. So they removed the provision that the flag route, the entire route would be subject to the parking requirement of no parking space within 0.5 of that bus route. So they struck that, and it's actually where the bus embarks from is the 0.5 mile requirement. And so that no longer applies in North Andover. I guess maybe we need clarification whether North Andover Mall would be considered an embarkment, but I don't think so. I think it's the station itself.
And Gina, I also saw in the regulations that it said specifically that if you are, use the word if, you are going to allow for more than one ADU on a lot, then it has to be by special permit. The implication, I think, clearly there that you do not have to allow for more than one ADU on a lot.
Yep, I think they strengthened that interpretation that you do not have to allow for it if you don't choose to.
Okay. So, and just since we're starting a new public hearing, we have attached all of the, we've been discussing this for a few months now. We've attached all of the documentation to the packet as part of, it's all part of the record now. But why don't we just, if there is anyone who's watching, why don't we just kind of go through quickly what our bylaw does? Or do you have a question for Sean?
Well, so I don't know if we want to, I just have a comment on, I guess, the new regs from the House and Livable community.
Okay, so let's do that.
So, Gina, I guess they added more clarification to unreasonable regulations as it pertains to utilities.
Yes.
So, how it reads is a municipality may not require a separate utility connection such as water, sewer, electric, provided that separate connection may be required by a municipal or regional utility or investor own utility by state law, by local, regional, state board or commission, or by court order. So how I interpret that is that we can't.
What page is this, Sean?
So this is page in the red line. I guess it's page 5. So it's section 3 of within unreasonable regulations and it's
Any
under.
requirement concerning utility safety and emergency access that is more restrictive than is permitted by state requirements, including under the fire code. A municipality may not require a separate utility connection such as water, sewer, electric, provided that a separate connection may be required by a municipal or regional utility, investor-owned utility by state law, by a local, regional, or state board or commission, or by court
Yep.
order.
So my question is that could we require and restrict that the utilities come from the primary dwelling unit and not separate? Because it's calling out that it's a separate, like we can't restrict, or we can't require that we split the utilities, but can we require that the utilities are combined?
I mean, I'm not sure reading this. The sense I got, though, was that they don't want us doing anything for utilities that we don't do for single-family homes, is the sense that I got. I mean, that's the sense I got reading through the whole thing of the intent. So unless that's something that we normally do, I would stay away from it.
And we can't be more restrictive than the state requirements, so.
Right.
And even when I sent that email a while ago about DPW's preference, it was always a preference. He didn't indicate that he could mandate it, but they have a preference, and that's who they would have to get a permit through.
I think one thing we can do is that just kind of keep that on our radar. I mean, it's not going to be like there's 100 of these, come the first year, there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
and kind of see how they come out.
Mhm.
And then if we need to make amendments, I'd rather be more conservative and not do anything that would potentially invalidate our bylaw,
Yeah.
just to make sure we have it.
I guess how I'm looking at it is that, given that we have separate dwellings or separate accessory dwelling units under special permit, that, I guess reading this is that we could craft a bylaw that says that all the utilities have to run through the primary dwelling unit that go to the separate dwelling unit, but that could be waived for under current, whatever condition that we're, if we find whatever we find reasonable. Because again, I think it's interesting that the state calls out that we can't restrict, enforce a detached accessory dwelling unit with separate utilities, but why wouldn't they just, I don't understand why they would.
On the topic of utilities, is it electric, water, or sewer a higher level of concern, or just
Yeah, I mean,
in
so,
general?
it's just in
But
general.
Is it one of the three that's driving your?
Yeah, so I mean, just thinking about it, right, is that not all of North Andover has underground utilities, right? And so if you're going to develop an ADU, right, on a lot which has utility poles, you're going to connect that ADU with another wire crossing a primary dwelling. Versus what we could do is that if it's a separate dwelling, you could have the existing wire that goes through to the primary dwelling and then run a conduit, right, from the primary dwelling to the separate dwelling. And it's just more of kind of thinking about aesthetics and how it would look. Because at the end of the day is that if everyone, which is unlikely, pulls an ADU permits and then develops a separate unit, right, you're going to have more wires going
So
to the separate.
I agree with you with the electrical wires.
Yeah.
I think in hindsight, it might be a sense of, geez, why did they allow that? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's terrible.
Yep.
However, I also would see that for water and sewage, that's really gonna be driven by DPW
Yeah, no, totally.
concerns.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this is really,
It's really about electrical
About
wires.
electrical.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah.
And it's really about electrical on detached.
correct.
Yes. Yeah, because you can't, I mean,
Which have to-
if it's attached, it's gonna run through the primary dwelling anyway.
So
right?
if it's for electrical and it's detached, which has to go through a site plan review anyway,
Yeah,
I'm not sure that we need, I mean, wouldn't
Well,
that be something
but
that would just come up?
Electrical attached is not an issue.
No, right, so
Yeah, yeah.
electrical, but our proposed bylaw says if it's detached.
Oh,
it's gonna-
detached. I
Detached,
didn't
sorry.
hear you.
Detached has to go through site plan review.
yep.
So, I mean, it seems like that would just be couldn't that just be a topic for our site plan review to consider rather than
Yeah, yeah.
specifically legislating?
I mean,
it?
I think we could, right? But I mean, I think we would need to have something within our site plan review language saying we prefer that the electrical would run through the primary dwelling, so we don't, I mean, again, so we don't have more wires crossing the primary dwelling, right? But
Yeah.
that could be waived, right? To a degree, but I don't know.
I agree with you.
Rules and regulations.
Huh?
Put it in the planning board rules and regulations. We haven't updated that in a long time.
Yeah.
I would.
This language is pretty specific, that we may not require a separate connection.
Right, so, but,
Yeah,
the-
but what I'm arguing is that we require a combined connection, right? Not a separate.
so a separate connection would mean one wire going to, it's interesting because this does say you cannot require a separate, but can you, the inverse, and I think is Sean's
Right.
point, can you require
Or
combined?
combined.
So
I
we
mean-
would be super compliant
Yeah.
to require the combined.
And again,
Okay,
it's really only because everything else is undergrounded, right?
Right.
Your gas, your sewer, your water, you don't see it. Electrical wires, in the instances where you have very dense dense exposed utility poles, the power company's gonna come by and then, oh, you got an ADU, we're just gonna run it directly to
Yeah.
separate meter across, right? We're not gonna underground it. But again, there's options where you can take the existing infrastructure of the primary dwelling, probably upgrade the panel to support the ADU, and then run a conduit, an electrical conduit to the ADU so you don't see the wires. I don't think it's a reasonable ask, especially given that they called out a separate, we can't require that there's separate utilities, right? But certainly, by that language, we can require combined utilities, right?
Well, with
Or
the
combined
option-
electric.
Option to waive.
Yeah, with the option to waive, right?
I like it.
I'm just wondering if it should be mandatory or should be preferential. So Gene, can you put in some language in the limited site plan review that, for detached ADU, that electrical wires should run to the primary principal residence? And did you say with an underground or with?
Yeah, then you would have a conduit from the primary principal residence, or primary dwelling, to the detached ADU, an underground conduit.
Okay.
And is that more restrictive than what is permitted by state requirements, which is the intro sentence in that
Well,
clause?
we have rules and regulations that require undergrounding utilities, right?
What is,
What's like devil's advocate, if they want to have separate utilities, right? We couldn't prevent that, right? Is that,
But you can still make it separate off the.
No,
main.
but that's.
No.
But
So,
like-
so we can't provide,
So-
we can't force them to
Make them
have
have
separate
separate.
utilities.
Right.
But by that language, we can draft a
We-
bylaw that they're combined, right?
right, but what if they don't want to combine it, is what I'm saying?
So then-
We can't restrict them, we can't
Well, we can always
restrict
waive
them
it.
not to combine.
Yeah, we can always waive it. and-
Because I feel like an overall picture of how these are gonna be used, some people are gonna be good with it combined, and some people aren't gonna be good with it combined.
Yep.
You know, so I don't know, that's just food for thought on it.
I mean, it only relates to detached accessory dwelling units, right?
Yeah.
Because anything that's intact, within the accessory dwelling unit or an addition, it's gonna run through the primary dwelling anyway.
So I have two concerns. I have one concern, which is Kate's concern about whether that's more restrictive than what we normally do for single families, even though this is a separate dwelling. Two, that I don't love the idea of making it a requirement, especially because we don't know what it'll look like. It might be different for different places in town. There might be compelling reasons. If anything, I would say that we make it a preference that, that it's preferred to have, because there may be compelling reasons to have separate,
Yeah. But I mean, don't we have requirements under, like, because this would fall under Dover, right,
Yeah.
at the end of the day? And obviously we have limited jurisdiction there, but like, there's a lot of things, I guess, in that vein is that we have limited site plan review and we have bylaws under Dover, and then a lot of it says I don't know if we waive things, but like,
But aesthetics are not really supposed to be one of the things we consider. on
Right.
Dover. So it's like how it looks, it's supposed to be the bulk, the height, the weight, the parking, the impact. How it looks and that you don't love the way it looks is really not something that I think Dover considers, and really I think is what they're trying to get away from under the accessory dwelling unit. So, I mean, if there's and one of the things in the regulations is like, you can't have things that are gonna be so limiting. You, like, that are, like, you can say that's a function of a reasonable idea, a reasonable function, but I don't know that this really furthers any of our interests to a significant degree. Gene, why don't we do a couple of drafts? We could put one thing in the red line of the limited site plan that requires it to be separate, kind of like Sean was saying, and then if you can put something that's more preferential, I think that would be I think I'd be much more inclined to do something that's preferential rather than
yeah.
demanding, because I don't know that I don't know what's available. I don't know how much it costs. Like, is that going to be a difference of cost of $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000? I really have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, again, anecdotally, if you're trenching something towards an ADU, whether you're doing from the primary dwelling or from the street, it's net probably gonna cost the same. Like, I don't think it's, again, I'm just thinking,
From the street is,
yeah, well, so it actually might be,
from the street's money.
yeah, so
It's
it
not-
might,
from
so
the
it might be,
house is easy.
yeah,
From
so
the
it might be
street,
less
opening up the
expensive if you
street,
do underground from the primary
Yeah,
dwelling, right?
I just don't know
yes,
enough
it'll be
to.
less expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to Eitan's point here, putting clamps on it or putting it into a box, that might be too much. But
And it could be very site-specific.
Yeah, yes,
So,
I agree with
to
that.
leave that,
Yeah, but again, we also have site plan review to address site-specific issues,
Right,
right?
so-
So like, we have a mechanism for that, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, so why don't, but that's, I guess my point is, why don't we say it's preference to have it go to the primary residence and then underground, but to be sorted out and such. We can put that as our preference.
okay, yeah, let's see what the language looks like.
Okay, all right.
Sean's in agreement for preference, so I think we only need one draft, one suggested language. I think everyone's in agreement it'll be preference, and I don't think you have to waive anything, it's just preference, and then see what they come up with.
Yeah,
Okay, let's do that then.
okay.
Okay, and so, so great. Anything else about the bylaw that people want to, why don't I just run through it quickly, just for anyone who might be watching. So, state law requires us now to have accessory dwelling units that is going into effect this week, I think. Is it the 6th? Something
No,
like.
this Sunday, this past
Oh,
Sunday.
this past Sunday.
February 2nd.
All right, so now it's in effect.
Meaning the state law.
State law is in effect, correct. And the purpose is to increase the supply of a more affordable and diverse type of housing, and several other purposes. We included all the definitions, both from the state law and that we're using throughout. Let's see. We've made it so that an ADU that is attached or within a primary residence is allowed by right. An ADU that is detached from the primary residence is by limited site plan review. If the primary residence is not a single-family house, so the state law does not allow us to carve out, and say that two families or multifamilies are not allowed to have ADUs. We were hoping that we could do that, but the law does not allow it. So if it is going to be on a two-family or anything more than a single family, that would also have to be by limited site plan review. We do not allow for more than one ADU on a lot. We do not allow for ADUs as short-term rentals. ADU can not be more than half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller, right? So the most it can be is 900 square feet. We have some different, it cannot be in the, generally cannot be in the front yard, although we can waive that. Gene, where did we land with the parking? One parking space?
One parking space, as
Generally-
long as you're at 0.5 miles from a transit.
Okay.
We'll just add any other special permit or variance required, they're still subject to that special permit or variance.
Right, so, right, if you need a watershed special permit, if you need a historic special permit, if you need a variance because you're non-conforming or otherwise, those are all still required. Okay, great. Jean, has anyone made any comments to you either before or during this hearing regarding accessory dwelling units?
No, but I just want to make one other comment. There's a
Yes,
little
please.
nuance to the definitions in the state regulations, so they define site plan review. In our bylaw, I drafted it as limited site plan review, because by definition, they're the same, however, we just call it something a little different.
Okay. Is there any members of the public here that wish to make comment? Seeing nobody that wishes to make comment, we will continue this public hearing until, is it February 25th? Is that right, Jean?
Sorry, yes.
I have that as our next hearing date. Okay, accessory dwelling unit continued until February 25th. Going to open the public hearing as to limited site plan review article.
Okay, so this is just kind of a sister article because, as Sean mentioned, ADUs are now protected use under the Dover Amendment. We had to amend our limited site plan review, which is our Dover bylaw, to include detached accessory dwelling units and proposed accessory dwelling units on a two-family or a multifamily lot.
Okay, any board questions, comments? We'll incorporate all of the documents that have been made part of the folder and that we've discussed previously. Jean, any public comment that you've received?
No,
Does anyone wish to make public comment? Okay, we'll continue that until February 25th. We'll now open the public hearing for Family Suite Zoning Bylaw Article 2 and Article 4.
so again, I'd say a sister amendment. It's a result of introducing accessory dwelling units. We've had a longstanding family suite bylaw, which allows for dwellings specific to certain relatives. And so the process today is to go through the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit to allow for a family suite, which would be dedicated to a specific individual or individuals. The special permit runs with that person. Should that person no longer live in that unit, then technically the special permit is no longer in existence. And in order to use that unit again, the owner would have to come back through the special permit process. We have included in the packet, I think it's linked under the ADU bylaw, but included is analysis we did over the last 10, 11 years or so to try to describe the amount of activity for family suites. And if I remember correctly, Eitan, you probably remember better than I, there were only 4 in the last 10, 11 years or so that were family suites that were greater than 900 square feet. And so upon review of that data and the fact that family suites allow up to 1,200 square feet as their maximum, so greater than the 900 provided for under an ADU. However, to get the 1,200, it kind of skewed towards the largest homes in town, right? So you have to have at least a 3,600 square foot of gross floor area in order to obtain that 1,200. And so through deliberations with the board during the discussion of this, the board recommended that we sunset the family suite bylaw. And to do that, we'd have to sunset it under the definition section, which is Article 2, as well as the permitted use section of the bylaw, which is Article 4. And to sunset it, 3 years are provided for anyone that currently is contemplating potentially coming forward and requesting a family suite. And so the sunset date, I believe we picked, was July 1st of 2028.
Right, because the family suite bylaw allows it's only 25% of your gross floor area. Someone would be better off, if your house is under 3,600 square feet, you actually get more out of the ADU, because you can get up to 900 square feet at 50%. So you can get more. It was only for houses between 3,600 and 4,800, so pretty large size houses that would get the potential benefit of the family suite. There were only a few of those. I think it was like 4, as Gene said, over the last 10 years. And there is the possibility of those then becoming, once the person who's using it as a family suite no longer does, those becoming basically larger size ADUs and sort of taking advantage of that system. And the lack of kind of use of those as family suites, we felt that, in prior discussions, probably best to just sunset that. If anyone really wants to do a family suite in the next few years, they have that opportunity. But otherwise, then everyone's playing with the same kind of rules and regulations. We're not having some that are monitored, some that are not, having different rules and regulations for different types. Everything is all under the same rubric.
So, Eitan,
Yes.
remind me, the sunset is 3 years for anyone who wants to create a family suite.
Correct.
But what was the conclusion of existing family suites? They're grandfathered and will not be terminated as a result of the ADU law. You can, if you've built a 1,200 square foot that
It's-
would not
yep.
meet the requirement of the ADU, but it did meet the family suite, that's grandfathered for as long as you use it within the definition of the family suite.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because if you properly
Use it.
got and you properly obtained it, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
If it's legally registered and
yep.
used properly, it stays, because that was the law at the time.
Okay, good.
So as long as you've done that or have done it in the next 3 years,
Yep.
you can keep it as a family suite. After that 3-year period, if the person using it is no longer a relative, it doesn't meet the definition, then you would have to either change it out of a family suite or downgrade it. If you're under 900, you can make it into an ADU. If it's bigger than the 900, then you'd have to change it. But otherwise, your grandfather.
Right, we put a provision in, and we allow people to bring it into compliance with the ADU bylaw. They have a year to do that without any penalties. They do have to convert it to meet the state definition of an ADU. If it's permitted as a special permit and they're still in compliance, meaning the person that was permitted to live in the family suite is still living in it, they can do so for as long as they want. There's no sunset on somebody living in it that's still in compliance with the special permit.
Questions?
So where is that, the clause that says that they have to convert the family suite to an ADU? That's in the ADU bylaw? I don't remember it, but,
Gene, I'm not hearing you.
or is it in the limited?
I think it's in the ADU.
It's in the ADU. It's
Yeah.
towards the very end. I don't have it open, but I can
Okay,
open it in a
that's okay.
second. But it-
Yeah,
No, I've
It's
got
very
it.
close to the end.
Okay.
it's in the ADU.
You-
And
you
so
see it?
so the sunsetting of the definition of family suite doesn't pose a problem if if they're continuing family suites after 2028?
Correct.
With two conditions: that it was properly permitted at the start, and that it's continuing to be used within the definition of family suite.
But the definition will have sunsetted at that point.
No, the sunset is for creation of new family suites.
Well, the definition clause has a sunset on it in the,
Oh, you're saying pulling it
Right.
out of the bylaws, so it's no longer there?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I mean,
Okay.
just think of it this way. If a law is created now,
Yeah.
the law now says you can make a family suite and do this. That permit stays as long as you're using it as a family suite. The fact that that law will no longer exist means you cannot create a new family suite. It does not invalidate your current family suite as long as it still meets your permitted conditions.
And our bylaw has a table of revisions, and if this were to pass, on that table of revisions, it will say this family suite bylaw sunsetted.
Got it.
Doesn't mean that you can't look at past bylaws and see that it did exist and this is what was required.
okay.
So Gene, this is what, actually, is good. I'm glad you brought this up, because I was curious on the kind of the mechanism. So like, if we were gonna repeal this at town meeting entirely without any sunset, would it be completely removed from our bylaws and like put in like a, or in like a revision, like, and so basically it's the same mechanism whether it expires or repealed?
Correct.
Okay, got it,
Yeah, we could just say it ends today, it's over and it's
Yeah, yeah.
done with now.
got it.
But it still doesn't, it still would, even if we ended it at this town meeting, it wouldn't invalidate anyone who lawfully had a permit already.
Got it.
It's just like it's if you change zoning, you know, to now say you need, you need a 5,000 square foot lot. If you were in a zoning area that had 2,500 square foot, you built at that time, it doesn't mean that you now have to change that. You're grandfathered in at what you had.
Pre-existing non-conforming use.
There you go.
There you go.
Existing non-conforming. That's what he's basically become.
John, you right, remember, but the last time I think we sunsetted a bylaw was the growth management bylaw. So that
Yeah.
started in the early 2000s and it sunset in 2010, and you no longer see it in the bylaw today.
Got it.
I think we also, didn't we also sunset the moratorium on marijuana stuff as well? There was like a year period where we weren't passing any rules until we figured out what was going on. So we did
Yeah,
that
we
too.
put it in specific for a certain time period.
Okay, any public comment here for the family suite? Nothing. Okay, Historic Barn Overlay District, will open the public hearing as the Historic Barn Overlay District.
Do I need to recuse
All
myself?
right, this is somewhat of a housekeeping warrant article.
Yep.
The bylaw went in, I believe in 23, May of 23. The Attorney General approval is included in the meeting packet, and essentially, they found that our information required section was not consistent with Mass General Law in that we had them deliver in their application to the planning department as opposed to the town clerk. So now we've put language in that it is delivered to the town clerk, but it is recommended that it's reviewed ahead of submitting that with the planning department. In addition, there was language in the boundary map that stated that the boundary map itself was attached to this warrant article, and the warrant didn't include the boundary map, and so this year that map is included.
Okay, so Peter, yeah, we'll recuse you, but you don't have to leave. You just don't participate in the conversation. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yes. Not as a member of the board.
Okay,
I have a question as a member of the public.
okay, go ahead.
Does this affect any existing permits under the Historic Barn Overlay District?
I don't believe so. Gene, do you think so? I don't think so. Because there's a severability clause, and two, I think it would just, if someone wanted to complain about basically someone would have to complain about having to turn it in, how they turned it in, but no, I don't believe so, no.
Okay, thank you.
Nope. All right, any other public questions or comments? Seeing none, open the public hearing as to the floodplain district.
Rejoining the board?
Yes, thank you, Peter.
Right?
Okay,
So
floodplain.
this is another bylaw that has some red line amendments. So we've been dealing with someone at DCR. She actually escalated it within her department for another review, and that person did a pretty thorough review and recommended a lot of, again, more housekeeping. We had some redundant language, we had unnecessary language, and so he did a very specific review. I included his comments in the past that he submitted. I have addressed those comments in a red line version, and today included in the packet an email back from the person we've been dealing with, Nadia at DCR, who said that we are now meet the minimum requirements and we are in compliance. So that email's there. She just asked that if there's any further amendments, that we again submit them to them for review. But as of today, that should be the last amendment to the floodplain bylaw.
Okay, good to be in compliance. Any questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll continue that and all the other public hearings until February 25th. Okay, Jean, anything else on your end?
No,
Okay, can I get a motion to approve, meeting minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 21st?
So moved.
I would like to comment on the meeting minutes.
Okay, so, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So in the meeting minutes, we made note of the comments I made about I'm sorry, I'm losing it here. The OSRP, outdoor recreation,
Open space and
Open
recreation
space
plan.
recreation plan, thank you, Kate. So we were gonna review the draft after the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board,
Select Board?
Select Board review it.
Yeah, a final draft can be reviewed after Conservation
Yeah,
and Select
and
Board
when-
comment.
When do they review it? So when would we review the final draft again?
Jean, do you know that?
no.
Don't know.
I don't follow their meetings. I will know once that hits an agenda. I look at their agendas, but as far as I'm aware, it's not gone to select board yet.
Okay, but we will have that opportunity to review it, and the reason I'm asking is, in our last meeting, as noted in the minutes, I asked that we consider 2 additional items to be noted in the OSRP. I've reviewed it again, and there's 2 additional items that I think we should consider, including in the draft OSRP, which I'm letting the board know. There's 2 additional concerns I have, as long as we can also consider those when we do review the OSRP. And I can quickly tell you what those 2 things are.
Hold on 1 second, Peter. What we talked about is if you have any additional comments, send them to me so that they can get on the Conservation Commission and Select Board ahead of them looking at it. Because otherwise, we'll be in this circle where it comes back to the planning board. At that time, we anticipate a drafted letter of recommendation coming from the board in support of this report.
Okay, that's not exactly.
Assuming that it incorporates your last comments, but if you
Yeah.
have any additional, please get them to me as soon
No,
as possible so that.
I absolutely do. I'm only mentioning it now, Gene, because I wanted to be open about this. So I had not entirely understood what you just said. I did send you the 2 comments, and yes, I will absolutely send you the 2 additional comments as well, and I will do that quickly.
Okay, because ideally, we'd want the commission to see those as well as the
Right.
select board ahead of it circling back to you.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense. I appreciate you highlighting that. I will do it quickly. And if the board would like to know what those 2 additional comments are, I'd be happy to tell you. Otherwise, I'll just send
So
them to Jean.
what I would say is if you'd like to share them with us, what you should do, because right now we're just talking about the meeting minutes.
Right.
What you should do is, 1, I think you should send those to Jean.
Yep.
I think you should follow up with Amy Maxner just to see when those things are going to,
Well, when I sent the last ones to Jean, the 2, I sent them to both Jean and Amy,
Yep.
so I can do the same.
do the same, but also maybe find out when, if she may have a better sense of the schedule of when that's gonna go before conservation.
Okay.
And then if you want us to hear about them, what I would suggest is just, you can send it as like a letter or an email to the planning board and say, I'd like these to be
Why can't I just tell the planning board?
Because it has to be on the agenda.
Why can't we put it on the agenda?
That's what I'm
next time?
saying. Yes, so I'd say, put it in a
I have to
document.
send a letter to the planning board?
You don't have to, no,
Put it
you-
on the agenda?
I just, so we can put on the agenda OSRP discussion.
Yeah,
We can do that, but it might just be helpful so people know what we're talking about ahead of time.
sure.
That's all. So we can put that on the
I
agenda.
will send
Yeah.
a note to
Yeah.
Jean
Yeah,
with the 2 additional items to
Yeah.
go on the agenda.
yeah,
And I will send those 2 additional items also to Jean and Amy.
okay. And then we can put that on and then we can discuss them then.
Great.
I just want to make sure we're doing it so that everybody knows
As,
about it.
as do I,
Yeah.
and that's why I mentioned it tonight, because
Yeah.
I don't want to, I want everything to be out in the open.
Okay, great. So are the meeting minutes fairly reflective of what we discussed?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 26th.
So moved. Second.
Second, okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Well,
What?
do we have a member of the public that wants?
Oh,
I have questions that are fairly simple.
Uh,
And that is,
oh.
has the town done,
come on up here.
oh, I'm sorry.
And what,
My name is Steve Gessing. I'm at 61 Essex Street, North Andover.
okay.
And my question is, has the town done any research at this point of what the demand will be for ADUs?
Okay, so I'm gonna reopen or go back to the accessory dwelling unit public hearing, the limited site plan public hearing, and the family suite public hearing. And we're gonna include this as part of those, okay? So we're back on the record on those. Ask your question again, sorry.
The question is, has the town done any research on the demand for ADUs as a result of this new change in laws? And let me explain why I'm asking the question. And it's really, the demand may place a lot of pressure on the town's facilities in terms of DPW, perhaps building inspection, et cetera, et cetera. And there might be a rush to have people coming to town hall and asking for, you know, the permissions and permits, et cetera. And I just don't know what the consequence of that might be. I would like to have an ADU on my property, and therefore I'm wondering if there will be a rush to the gold, if you will.
So I've not heard that anecdotally that there will be. We haven't done any studies since the law was passed, but we have done, there was a forum that Peter and I and Jean did at the senior center about mostly in education. We've done housing production forums and things like that. So I can tell you that there is an appetite and people like the ideas of ADUs. But at the same time, at least on the family suites, we're talking maybe 1 or 2 a year that have been permitted over the last 10 years. Now, this ADU bylaw makes things a little bit easier because there are, for people to build, because there are lesser requirements than the family suite. But at the same time, given the current state of construction costs and all of the things, I'm finding it unlikely that there's going to be that much of a rush. And I will say that it also will depend on what you build. So if you build an accessory dwelling unit that is by right, okay, that means that it's attached to your single-family residence, and that it's under 900 square feet, all you have to do is just pull a permit. Like, it's basic, just like building, an in-law apartment or building a garage or something like that. The permitting is very minimal. There will be more permitting if it's something that's detached, or if you have a 2-family and you're building onto that. But the basic run-of-the-mill ADU, the permitting is designed by the state law to be very light.
Yeah. So, for example, we live in the watershed, and
Yeah.
we also have wetland.
Yep, so you'll have to come to us for a
So the
watershed.
special permitting process would probably be very difficult and challenging for time, and I have a mother-in-law who's 90, and we're also trying to figure out time schedules, et cetera, et cetera.
Are
Yeah.
you speaking of potentially an attached or detached?
It would be a detached.
Yep. So, I mean, watershed special permits don't take that much more time, but yeah.
With wetland?
Yeah, no, well, they're all within the wetland. I mean, that's the idea of the watershed special permit. But yes, yeah, and conservation too. Honestly, conservation may take the most time out of all of that. So yes, that process. You can start moving that process along if you wanted to as well, knowing that these rules are going to be passed, but the state law is now in effect. So you are able to just know that because we've started the public hearing process, that if our bylaw is passed, everything will follow under that bylaw rather than state law. So I don't anticipate a rush, but you do have some extra hurdles with
Right.
watershed and with conservation as well, and with a older but hopefully still doing well mother-in-law.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
you're welcome.
Hey, John, for just
Yep.
a little perspective on quantity,
Yes.
statewide, they are anticipating 8 to 10,000 units statewide over 5 years. And so you can kind of do some math and bring that down to 351 municipalities and kind of get the impact. But that's at a state level what they're anticipating.
Thank you, Gene.
Yep. Steve, the way we see it is that there aren't going to be that many, but they're going to be impactful for the people that can do them. So for someone like you, this could really be something that makes a big difference and helps. But I don't see them being super widespread.
It's my man bag. My wife says that if I lose my phone, that's one thing. But if I lose my man bag, I lose everything.
Oh,
Got to be careful there.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen.
Thank you,
Okay.
folks.
Thank you. Thank you for your coming. Sean, thank you for
Hey,
pointing
very
that
nice
out.
meeting you.
Nice
too.
to meet you.
Okay, great. All right. With that, we will now continue those public hearings until February 25th. Now can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great, thank you, Gene.